Happy New Year and welcome to the first episode of the Mother Gaia Birthy Pod for 2025. I'm Katie Bolton, your host, and I'm so excited to start this year with an incredible story and some seriously empowering insights. Today I'm joined by the amazing Nicole Holden. Nicole shares her second birth story and highlights the importance of trauma-informed care and thorough birth preparation. But that's not all. Nicole and her partner turned their birth journey into something truly inspiring. She trained him to be her doula, and together they created DudeDoula, an app designed to support birthing partners in providing the best care and support possible. So if you're curious about how to make birth preparation a team effort, or want to hear about how a challenging first experience turned into a transformative second birth, this episode is for you. Let's get straight into it.
The story I'm going to tell today is the story of my second birth. I have one other child, and I went through my first birth, and I don't want to share too many details because I think everyone's version of trauma is different. And so I just want to leave it at like, it was pretty traumatic for me. I kind of went into it overly optimistic and really underprepared, not really knowing what I was getting myself into. It was kind of
Sounds like my first birth. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was hard. Like, it was really difficult to like summon the courage to want to go through that again.
Mm-hmm.
So for my second birth, when my husband and I were like, we want to have a second child, I came to my husband. I was like, I can't go through that again. So this is the story of sort of coming. It's like the phoenix rising from the ashes. I feel like where it's my comeback story.
Nice.
It's a pretty good one. It was not by any means any easier than the first birth, but I felt a lot better going through it. So it's the story of my almost 24-hour labor. I asked my husband to be my doula, which was an interesting experience. And my second child, we call him a surf and turf baby. So I'll explain that why
I already have an idea.
So it was very eventful. It was a great birth, but it's one of my most cherished memories when I look back on it. And I love to share it with people. And it's so fun when I'm actually like in the dentist chair, which I get really nervous when I'm in the dentist chair, I think about moments from that birth because I have such fond memories of it, which is so crazy to me and so cool because thinking about my first birth, I would have never thought that was possible.
No, absolutely. So sort of set us up. How long ago was this surf and turf birth?
3 years
ago. Such a nice thing to say, that isn't it? Surf and turf birth.
Surf and turf birth. It rolls right off the tongue.
It really does,
doesn't it? It really does. It has a good ring to it.
Ah, right. So 3 years ago, I told you I could talk for England. 3 years ago.
It was 3 years ago. It was my second pregnancy. I never took a pregnancy test. I knew the first day of my last period, I knew we were trying, and I knew when the moods hit and I didn't get my period that I was pregnant, and we just went with it. And I was trying not to think about it too much, trying not to overthink it. I had a pretty uneventful pregnancy. I had like some nausea throughout the pregnancy, but it was pretty normal. We went through COVID. That I was pregnant during COVID. We got COVID. That was a little bit scary. We had some back and forth. That was in the earlier times when they were worried about the placenta. So we ended up with some more intense weekly scans just to make sure that everything was good. But for the most part, it was a pretty easy pregnancy. And yeah, we just kind of, I don't know. I don't know how to say it. When you have another kid when you're pregnant, it's like a better distraction sometimes.
Yeah. You're concentrating on someone else.
I'm concentrating on someone else, and I think that was good, so that I wasn't overthinking things too much. Yeah. So it was a really uneventful pregnancy. I just kind of sailed through it. And as I was preparing for my labor, that's really what I thought about the entire time. I just thought about my labor. I'm like, how do I want this experience to go? The first time, put my labor in the hands of other people. And I just thought, you know what? These people know more than me. They're more experienced than me. They're going to know what to do. And I think I made a mistake thinking that. And the second time around, I asked myself, what do I want? What do I want out of this experience? How do I want to feel? What do I want to have happen? And I focused on that throughout my entire pregnancy. So by the time I got to labor, I was pretty clear, and everyone around me was super clear on what I wanted.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So just sort of going back to sort of like the pregnancy and what have you, you're saying like obviously it was sort of back end of COVID, like in and out of lockdowns, everybody's a bit unsure and everything like that. Did you find it then easier to kind of step out of the system a little bit because the system were kind of leaving you alone?
Yes, that's a really great question. I actually decided to have a home birth because I kind of was like scared shitless. Can we swear?
Yeah, you can swear as much as you want.
Okay. Okay, great. I was scared shitless, so I went the other way, but it was a really great excuse to be like, no, I'm having a home birth because COVID doesn't allow, like my husband can't be there. I don't want to be alone. And it was kind of a really great way for my friends and family who were super scared of me having a home birth to be like, oh, okay, well, we can kind of accept that a little bit.
Yeah.
So yes, times were changing and everyone was kind of adapting. And so it was a great time to kind of step in and be like, I'm going to do this the way that I need to do it to feel good.
Absolutely. And my other thing, so obviously most people have their husband there at the birth.
Yeah.
And without being too, how shall I say this, stereotypical, they're not much help.
No. And I think my husband would be okay if I said this. In my first birth, he was useless. Like and it was so awful because I was going through all of this and he kind of just like froze because I think it was really hard to see me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And he didn't know what to do. And I remember being so pissed because I'm like, I'm going through all of this and you just get to sit over there.
Yeah.
How is this fair? So I do remember that very much so. But when I decided to get him involved, which is when I asked him, hey, I really want you to support me through this birth, I was doing a bunch of research, and the research actually shows that if you have constant emotional support throughout your entire birth, you and your baby have safer outcomes. So I was like, what is the missing piece? Like, what am I missing here? If I need somebody who provides constant emotional support, I didn't get that. I thought I was going to get that in the hospital, but that's just not the way that it's set up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I kind of had an aha moment where I was like, oh, well, my husband is kind of a built-in emotional support person. I think maybe if we just train and like prepare a little bit better, maybe he can be the person that kind of steps in on that. And I think it was definitely easier having him be there for me when we were in our own home. I definitely think that sometimes in the hospital environment, men are invited into the room, but I don't necessarily think they're 100% like welcome. And I don't think they necessarily know exactly what their place is at all.
Yeah. You kind of looking at from my perspective as well, and from things that I've seen before, like you said, they're not, it's not that they're unwelcome. It's that they're seen as like, well, yeah, they're here because they're married. And that's it. They're not seen there as being like useful or an integral part of it or anything like that. They're there because they kind of have to be, and no one knows what their job. So that as the husband, they have no idea what their job is, and they're like,
exactly.
We weren't set up for this. We weren't told what was going to happen. We've never seen it. And we're only seeing what's happened on television. Because I'm waiting for you to rip my balls off.
No, 100%.
Right?
And like what everyone sees on television is so dramatic and so scary. And it's like
so quick.
Yes. Yes.
It's like, I'm just shopping in it. Oh, my water's gone. Oh, look, a baby. Like, what?
I know.
Yeah. No,
I know. And then you get in there and you're like, what the fuck? This is not what it's like.
Yeah, I didn't sign up for this.
That's how I felt my first birth. I was like, I did not sign up for this.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me out.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
done.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
So I feel for them in a way because they're there and then they're just kind of standing around like my husband and I kind of joke sometimes like when he's like, give it to me like a caveman. Like, what do I do? So we joke, or he'd be like, me sit, me watch. But then it's like, if you tell him, like, me give her water, then it's like, okay, I know it sounds like I'm making fun of him, but I'm not. But sometimes for a guy, he's like, I want it super simple. Just tell me what to do. And sometimes I don't think that they know. No one tells them.
No, absolutely. You've got that aspect of it. So obviously they don't know. You're expecting them to know, and they've got as much idea as you have. You've gone in completely like naive and gone, oh, just breathe the baby out, like la la la. And then everybody else is around going, oh, there we go. We've got a first-time mum and an idiot husband, right? You sit down and you push. Do you know?
Yeah.
So no, there's this link of, well, there isn't a link. There's one person
There's
having
no
a baby.
link. Yeah.
There's one person having a baby. There's a bloke sitting in the corner, and then there's a couple of midwives going, "Yeah, we'll just catch when it comes out." Just you know, and yeah.
Well, and I don't know if it's like this for you, but for me and my husband, I am really good at telling him sort of like, this is what I like, this is what I want you to do, and then we call him like a really good completer finisher. Like, so I think he's really good at the action part of the relationship. So he'll be like, what do you want me to do? You tell me and I'll do it. But in labor, that really threw us on our asses because I was not in a position to tell him at all what I wanted him to do.
Yeah.
So learning that from the first time, going to the second time around, I was like, okay, if I can lay it out for him beforehand and just give him this framework of like how I want him to use his energy while we're in labor, I think we'll set ourselves up for success. And I also thought too, I'm like, who do I trust the most in the world? Who am I going to listen to? Because I'm a pretty stubborn person. So I'm thinking, I didn't want to listen to any of the strangers the first time around that wanted to help me, that were on my, like, that were just these doctors and nurses that were coming in and out of my room. So I'm like, who do I trust the most? Oh, that's my husband. I probably would be the most likely to listen to him.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. I mean, I'm a big advocate for, I mean, everybody says I'm a bit of a feminist warrior. It's like, yeah, but that's not at the detriment of other people. Like, I can be feminist and still like men and want encourage them and want them to be an active part of our lives and things. It's not like let's burn all men to the ground. It's like that's not how it works.
One of my favorite things that I read when I was doing the research is Ina May. Have you read her book, Ina May Garten? She was a midwife in America. Have you read her?
I've read all sorts. I follow her on Instagram and it's just
I love her stories. And one thing that she said like, I don't know exactly how she said it, but she said something to the effect of the way that the baby gets in there can be useful in getting the baby out. And so
that's like, how it went in, that's how it's coming out.
Right. And so what I mean by that is I think that your husband has a role, or a close person who loves and cares for you deeply. It doesn't have to be your husband, but it should be somebody that cares for you deeply and is going to have to go home with you and kind of like deal with the consequences of what has happened and the aftermath. You need that. You need that love. You need that connection. Like, I'm not vouching for you to like be like, you have to have sex with your partner while you're in labor, because I don't really know many people that want to do that. No. But what sex symbolizes is that beautiful connection with somebody where you get to be vulnerable and somebody says like, I've got you, I take you as you are. Yeah. And I think everybody needs that. I mean,
if you take sort of like what she said in and of itself, I've seen this in other things where I've seen other people taking that and taking it a bit further and explaining it more and things like that. But if you take that in and of itself of what is it that you need in order to be that close and sexual with another human being, you're looking at dimmed lights, privacy, maybe a little bit of low music, all that kind of stuff. You need to get the oxytocin flowing, you need to feel loved, you need to feel safe, you need to feel secure. I mean, you get down to the basics of it. You need to be in a certain position to be able to do it and what have you. And there's certain positions that you can get in
in birth that helps and things. So you kind of like, you can look at it from all sorts of different angles. You never actually have to get down and have sex, but
Exactly.
I mean, it helps apparently.
I've heard. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not. I didn't want to be touched at all during any of my, especially when I was in active labor. If anybody touched me, I was like, it was making my skin tingle with like, just no, I don't want you anywhere near me. Get off. However, I can see how maybe it's early stages, a bit of distraction, let's get the lights down low, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But like you said, it is that thing of, who are you going to have in there? Are you going to have 6 or 7 midwives, a consultant, somebody else who's floating in and out, this, that, and the other, all going, oh, you're doing that sexual position nicely, aren't you? Would you like a dildo to go with that? You're just not going to do it, are you? So why would you do it in birth? Like, you are there, legs akimbo, people looking up your business, seeing what you had for breakfast. You don't want 17 people up there, this, that, and the other, people playing you like a puppet. It's
no, you don't. Okay, well, and you bring up a really good point too. Like, I didn't realize like how for my first birth, I said yes to having medical students in my room. So I had a line of 17 kids while I'm pushing. I know they're all looking right at the cash and prizes, and I can see, Katie, the looks on their faces, and they're horrified. And I was just like, I was dying inside. It took away all the joy, everything. Yeah. So I learned how important it is and how intimate your birth can be, and like how you really need to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with just like a few key players, I will say.
Yeah. I mean, I really do feel for the midwives and the doctors and everybody. They need to get experience somehow. And if every birthing mother goes, no, you're not allowed. However, there's ways and means of doing it. The stages they can and can't be in. I'd be looking at like, oh, this is my 3rd birth. I'm quite happy for 1, 2, for 10 minutes or so. Pop the red in, see what it's like, then bugger off again. But not a line of 17. My good God, like a football field.
It was so bad. And it was at a time when I felt like I was like failing at my, so I like felt like I had an audience as all of this was like going on. It was so
a round of applause. Yeah.
It was so bad. Yeah, right? I think I deserve that.
Please, standard ovation. Come on.
So
yeah, no, especially not for your first birth or anything like that. It's just, I don't think it should be offered to students to go and watch someone in their first birth, and it should be something that's discussed with the mum prior to going in when it's 2nd, 3rd, 4th, however many motor births you've got down the line. So yeah,
I think once you have that mom energy of like fuck off, and I said fuck off, that's
right.
When you should be allowed in the room. Before, like for my first, I was not there yet. I was just a little sheep.
yeah, and you are doing everything that you're told because you think that that's what you should do, and so brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like we've got on a bit of a tangent, but that's fine. I like tangents.
We did.
Let's bring it back in a bit. So, this is going to sound really, really strange out of context, but how did you train your husband?
No, I think it's a great way to say it. That's exactly what I did. Well, I put him on a leash. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, you wouldn't be the first person I've had on here.
I'm just kidding. That's right. Okay, so I did a couple of things. I did not really involve him at first. I did all of my research. I read all of the books, and I just kind of figured out what it was that I wanted, what my coping mechanisms were. Like I said, I realized that I'm a really private person. When I am trying something new, I don't want an audience until I know I've mastered the skill. So I just did more. I didn't realize, like, I thought I would completely lose myself in labor, and that just wasn't true. Like, there were parts of me who I am at my core, and I still was that person in labor. So I am a very private person. I just had to ask myself, like, what's really important to me? Once I did that, I did a bunch of research. I figured out what coping mechanisms I thought I would want. I figured out what I wanted to hear. If you can't guess by now, I'm a really type A person. I did it all. And then I figured out, and from my research, like what could really make a difference in my satisfaction rate and also in my safety. And I found like a bunch of really simple things, like making sure that I was hydrated, which I absolutely was not for my first labor, making sure that I had food available if I wanted to have it, which I did not have for my first labor, making sure that I had access to the bathroom and that someone was offering and also taking me there. Because something that I learned was that you can actually stall your labor because your bladder is so close to your uterus that if we're holding and we're contracting, things may not move as smoothly. I also, what else did I do? Coping mechanisms. Oh, I had such a good flow for the recording.
That's all right. I've gone on a tangent on myself because it wasn't. This is awful, but so many women don't know their own anatomy properly. And it wasn't until this is awful as well. I'm saying this as a doula and like I was 30 odd years old as well. It wasn't until after my first birth that it's information that I had but hadn't connected. Baby can be right there and you can still wee. It's two different holes. Yes. Do you know when you do that thing when you're like, I knew this information, but why is it not like connecting it? You know, like I can go to the toilet and actually it's probably better for me to go because how much more space am I giving myself if I empty my bladder? And it's just because you don't get told. And yet obviously I knew it's two different places, but the information doesn't seem to fit right, does it? And you think,
no,
why did nobody tell me this? Why did nobody say, yes, you can do it this way, yes, you can have it like that? It just
and don't you think too, sometimes it's like it's like the most simple of information, like you're getting all the overly complicated information but not the most simple, like the most simple information, like you definitely can pee, you probably should pee in a 20-hour labor, like make sure you're doing that.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I asked myself was like, would I let a marathon runner run a marathon without making sure that they had the proper calories and the proper hydration? And the answer is no. And labor can sometimes be a marathon. You might skip a meal. You may need those electrolytes. So when I realized that, I was like, okay, these are the things that I definitely need to at least make sure that I'm taking care of my body and helping things run smoothly. And I thought to myself, my husband can definitely take care of that. Like he can make sure that I'm staying hydrated. These are really basic needs. And something that I really loved about that is it ends up being very parallel when the person that you've asked to support you is giving you food, is making sure you have access to water, is helping you go to the bathroom. It's like a parallel for taking care of a kid. Like you're doing those things. And so it was like really cool. It's a really cool parallel for a dad to sort of be like, well, this is your introduction to fatherhood. Like you're gonna have to do these things. So I kind of loved that little piece of it. So to go back and answer your question, I decided what was really important to me. I also included coping mechanisms in there. I knew that I just was really drawn to the idea of being in the water. So I just wrote down like a list of the top 5 coping mechanisms that I really wanted him to suggest or focus on. And we were lucky enough and fortunate enough to have weekly dates while I was pregnant. So on our weekly dates, when we had the opportunity to have uninterrupted time and conversation, I would say, hey, this is what I've been researching. I found this really cool thing. This is a cool coping mechanism. I just want to show you quick. And then I would either show him or we would really quick practice. It was like a 5 to 10 minute conversation, but it was really nice for me to be able to communicate, this is going to be really important to me. I need you to sort of have a little bit of experience with this and have this in your back pocket. The other thing that my husband ended up doing that I could have never imagined, but was super helpful, was I said to him, you know, will you be my doula? Will you support me? He, of course, said yes. And he said, how? And I said, well, I took all of my research and I put it into 20 pages of Google Docs. I just want you to refer to it while I'm in labor.
Oh, yeah. 20 pages in labor.
And my husband said, I love you,
but no,
but no,
I'm on his side there. I'm gonna be on his side for that.
Right? He said, absolutely not. So this is the beauty of my husband. He's very techie, always has been. So we both have iPhones. So he just took the information that I asked for, basic needs met, make sure I have food, make sure I have water. Here's a couple coping mechanisms that I want. Here's the things that I really do want to hear, and make sure that I'm going to the bathroom. He took that and set reminders for himself to go off every hour. So every hour, to his smartwatch or to his phone, he got a reminder, have Nicole drink water. And when he got that, he would just hold it up to my lips. Like, he didn't ask me. He was just like, this is a good idea. And I was so grateful for that, because there were so many instances during my labor where I was not at all thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
Or there would have been times that I would have had to crawl to the bathroom. I probably wouldn't have even gone. I would have crawled, because my insides were like just so spent from being in labor for so long. But he knew, got a reminder that it was probably time to try for a bathroom break, and then actually carried me there, or let me kind of hold on to him. And that ended up being so, so wonderful to just have. Like, I know everybody kind of is like, oh, technology, it can be really scary, but to sort of like make it be your personal assistant, which is, I think, kind of what he did, it was super duper useful, because when emotions kind of run high in labor, sometimes our logical brain goes out the window, and that just took him right back into the moment every time.
Yeah.
And it just kept his focus on me. And Katie, I loved that. Oh my God, I love that. Like, I just had somebody, I literally had somebody waiting on my hand and foot and thinking about things that I wasn't thinking about. And that I just felt very strong and very secure. And just because, and like you said, sometimes you don't want to be touched, but just like knowing that somebody's not over there in the corner scrolling on their phone, and they're 100% focused on you and what you need, that felt so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that thing as well, as like, especially as women, we think we've got to do everything, and you forget as well, like, even when I got into my third birth, I forgot how much it kind of takes you out of reality. You lose all sense of time, and sometimes you can lose sense of actually your surroundings and who isn't there and things like that, especially if you're in a hospital and there's people coming in and coming out and they're not doing what you want them to do, and this, that, and the other. But sometimes they can come in and go out and you have no recollection of them ever even being there. So having somebody
100%.
who, even fine, if your birthing partner, your husband, whoever's there, has to have a reminder that says, tell them to drink, tell them, if that's how they then involved, so be it. Brilliant, absolutely amazing, great, have that. Like, I couldn't think of a better way of doing it. As long as that thing's not going beep bop a doop bop and having a big song and dance in the corner, fine.
I love it. No, yeah, that worked for us. It was really nice. And you bring up another really good point too. I think that I also did not have a birth plan. I actually think, like, this is maybe a controversial hot take, but I think we should throw out the birth plan, and I think we should have birth preferences, which is like, hey, I would prefer not to be checked. I would prefer it if you guys, fucked off when you tried to come into this room. Like, leave me alone unless you really need to get in here. I think it's like, so what I did is I wrote my midwife a letter, so that because I knew, I was like, I'm going to be in labor. I'm going to be in the mode. I don't want to feel like I have to welcome her into my home. So, like, here's the letter. And so I think that that's a really important thing, especially for first-time moms, to get really clear on what you want. And then even if your partner is like, say you're going to have a doula be your constant support person, awesome. Then have your husband be the person that says, you're asking me a question that's on that paper on the door. Go look at the door and do not come back to me until you've done that. And then if you have a further question, that's fine. So there's so many different ways that your partners can be involved that could fit who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. Or let's say that you want your mom there, or you want your sister. There's just different ways of going about it. But I definitely think as a mom, spend time getting really clear on who you are and what makes you tick. and what your preferences are, get them written down, because in the moment you're not going to be able to communicate them. And I don't think you would want to, because you're so consumed and it kind of takes you out of that moment. Be in that moment, and then make sure that you have other people in place that are going to protect what you have put in place.
Yeah. So that's linked in with something that I'm actually doing myself. I'd already written, because I like writing little bits down that I'm thinking of asking and questions I want to go back to. So when we first started this conversation, my head went, you are coming at this from a trauma-informed place. And with lots of, like, I've talked to other people, I've actually talked to a trauma-informed midwife and a specialist and things like that. And from what they've said, from talking to other people, from stuff that obviously experiences that I've gone through, I totally agree with you that the traditional birth plan of, I want whale music and twinkly lights and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, by all means, set up for having that sort of stuff. That's fine. That's not a problem. But the issue with having that is then, well, if something goes wrong, what's plan B? And if that doesn't go right, what's plan C? And then if there's an emergency, what's plan D? And you're there, like, you've got 20 pages of a Google Doc trying to get everything sorted. My thought behind it, and I'm not trying to plug my own stuff, but it is my podcast, so I can do what I want.
I love it.
I'm doing this thing called, it's a birth support plan. Where you literally, you go through and you go, how do I want to feel in my birth? How do I want to be supported? How do I want to be communicated with? Who do I want? And that kind of thing. So it doesn't matter whether you're in the middle of the ocean with actual whales having a song, up a blinking mountain, or having a C-section, your birth support plan is going to be exactly the same wherever you are, because it's the support that you need, not the blooming water birth or the C-section or this, that, and the other. Those are just events. You need to be safe. You need to be treated the way that you need to be treated. You need to be talked to the way that you want to be talked to. And you need to make sure that all these people who are around you do that. So like for me, I mean, I've talked to other people, what have you. So for me, in the throes of transition, when you're going, I can't fucking do this, just rip me open and get this kid out of me. What I needed was someone to go, will you shut the fuck up? Do as you are told. You are in transition. Now dig fucking deep, love. Right? Whereas other people, that would traumatize them. They would need the, look, we're all right. You're fine. You're safe. You're okay. You're going through transition. Baby's nearly here. Let's do this. But if you don't tell the people around you that that's what you want, you ain't getting it.
Amen. Amen to every word you've just said. Because I think that, like, I think the hospitals and birth professionals get a really bad rap, because I think that everybody wants to help, but if they don't know how to help you in your specific way, they're going to make their best guess. And I understand that our policies and procedures definitely need some adjustments. But I think that if you're clear, just like you said, you're like, hey, I need you to slap me up a little bit and just be like, get your shit together. That works for me. That's perfect, because not everyone is going to know that. And it's not a one size fits all approach. And it's more of exactly what you said. This is how I want to be spoken to right now. This is how I want to be treated. And you almost have to remind people, like, I'm not a machine. I'm just another human being. I know that I can't speak to you right now and demand that like I normally would do.
Right.
Which is even more important of why we need to have it written out. Like, and why, and somebody else needs to be there to be like, don't you fucking dare. Like, don't you even try. And you need somebody that either has a really deep relationship with you or knows exactly what those preferences are and is not afraid to be like your bouncer, your birth bouncer. Back it up.
Yeah.
Get out here unless you're prepared to come and speak to her in the way that he needs to be spoken to.
Absolutely. Absolutely agreed.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So I've done a little bit of a plug. Let's do a little bit of a plug for you. I know we weren't going to do sort of like an obvious one, but from what you've described is the fact that you have got this app, and it does help the birthing partner, particularly the husbands, and just describe a little bit of how you've taken what obviously your husband's done. I'm assuming what he's done is I've gone, right, this is how I did it for my wife. Now I'm going to put this in an app and get it out there so that everyone can do it. So just talk a little bit through how it helps, what it does, that kind of thing. Just if you can sum it up, that'd be perfect.
Absolutely. It completely focuses on the man. The man or the husband is supposed to download the app. He says, hey, I'm going to use this, and it's going to communicate with him. The app does really, really basic things, but they amount to huge focus and attention on you, which as someone who is birthing and going through a tough time, it can feel really special and really wonderful to see someone acknowledging the work that you're doing. So it does 5 really simple things. It's going to remind him to make sure that you stay hydrated. It's going to remind him to make sure that you have access to food if you need it. He's going to ask you if you want to go to the bathroom and or take you there with the app. He is also going to offer different coping mechanisms. He's just going to be reminded to just try different things. And then there are affirmations in the checklist, different words, which can be really useful. He may be like, this is weird at first, but once he gets into the rhythm, he'll find his own rhythm and start saying his own things. Sometimes it's just nice to be told, first and foremost. And then there's another feature in it where there's a checklist, and anything that he takes responsibility for that he says he's going to do for you while you're in labor, he's going to write it there, and it's going to remind him to do it. So it just makes him tapped in and tuned into you. It's going to get him off the couch. And if it works anything for, if it works for anybody else the way that it did for my husband, at the end of the birth, everyone is going to tell you that you're a hero and that you should be a doula and you're so amazing and you're going to look great. Because at the end of mine, everyone was like, you should be a doula. And he was over there just like winking at me like, it was just my bone.
I love it.
So it's just a wonderful way to connect and get a husband involved. And it's not rocket science. It really is not.
No.
It's not at all.
No. Excellent.
It's just the ways that he loves you. Yeah.
So if anybody wants to find you or the app, where can they find you at?
They can find us on the Apple Store, and they can find us on the, I think it's Android Play store. If you want to find us on Instagram, New Dads, Expecting Parents, we have tips for dads specifically on there. And not to toot our own horn, we're not right about everything, but we are dad tested, mom approved. So like anything that's getting suggested, any tips, it's kind of, it works for both. It's not just a dad that's saying it. It's not just a mom. It's what's worked for a couple. And at the root of everything that we do, we just believe that when mom and dad are good, kids and family are good. And that's just what we want.
Yeah. And the app's called the DudeDoula. Yeah.
Yeah. It's called DudeDoula.
Cool. And I'm just going to sum up my last question for you, because I want to know if I'm right.
Yeah.
Surf and turf birth. Started in a birth pool, ended up on land.
Yep. 100%. Ding, ding, ding.
I'll have my cookie now, please.
Yep. I'll send one in the mail. 3 to 5 business days.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Mother Gaia Birthy Pod. A huge thank you to Nicole Holden for sharing her inspiring story and all of the wisdom behind trauma-informed care, birth preparation, and her journey to creating the DudeDoula app. Nicole, your story reminds us all of the power of partnership and preparing during birth. If you're feeling inspired to plan your own empowered birth experience, you can find all the information about my birth support planning sessions and the DudeDoula app in today's show notes. As always, thank you for tuning in to the Mother Gaia Birthy Pod. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this episode with anybody who you might find it helpful. I can't wait to bring you more empowering conversations this year, and until next time, take care and stay rooted in your power.